Now we are going to see the abnormals and the atypical gaits. Okay. So in the abdominal gaits, there are numerous causes that can cause an abnormal gait pattern. So there can be a great variation depending upon the severity of the problem. If there is a muscle is weak or the muscle is absent, or if the joint mobility is limited or the joint capsule can be tight. If the muscle is weak, we should check how much the muscle is weak, like grading the muscle. Okay. Then the joint motion is limited, we should check the range of motion of the particular joint. So next we are moving to the pathological gaits. So abnormality in the gait may be caused by simply due to just a pain, patient might not move the part, or joint or muscle range of motion limitation, or muscular weakness, paralysis. It can be a UMN or a LMN lesion, neurological involvement. And finally the limb length discrepancy or the leg length discrepancy, as you can call it. So there are types of pathological gait. Due to pain, it's called as antalgic or the limpic gait or sciatic gait. Okay. Or due to neurological problems, that might be due to a muscle paralysis, that may be a spastic gait. Number one, spastic gaits gives to various other gaits. Number one is going to be the circumdatory gait. And number two is scissoring gait. They will walk in a pattern of scissor, or drag the heel or drag the toe, or paralytic gait. Then robotic gait, that is your quadriplegic gait. Okay. Then we will move to the flaccid gait, that is nothing but the lurching gait, waddling gait like a duck, and gluteus maximus. So flaccid gaits are nothing but the lurching gait, waddling gait, gluteus maximus weakness gait, quadriceps weakness gait, and the foot drop weakness gait, that is going to be a tibialis anterior weakness gait. Cerebellar dysfunction may cause ataxic gait. Loss of kinesthetic sensation is called a stamping gait, and basal ganglia dysfunction can cause a festinating gait. Due to abnormal deformities, there may be equine squeeze, equinovarus gait, calcaneal gait, knock or bony gait, or genorecurvatum gait. Due to limb length discrepancy, there is a one gait called as equinus gait. So the first we are going to see about the antalgic gait, that is nothing but the painful gait. It is a compensatory gait pattern adapted in order to remove or diminish a discomfort caused due to a pain in the lower limb or the pelvis region. The characteristic features of the gait are decreased in duration of the stance phase. So you will be hesitant to stand right when you have a pain. They are unable to weight bear due to pain. So there will be a lack of weight shift laterally over the stance limb, and also keep the weight of the involved painful limb. So when the left is paining, you will be keeping the weight over to the right, not on the left side. Okay. The decrease in stance phase is affected side will result in decrease in swing phase of the sound limb, which is the normal limb. So the next one is called as the sciatic gait. The psoas bursa may be inflamed or edematous, which causes the limitation of movement due to the pain in the atypical weight. The hip is externally rotated, hip is adducted, and knee is slightly flexed. So this process tends to relieve the tension on this bursa. So indirectly the inflamed, hence relieving the inflaming structures from pain. Next one is the gluteus maximus gait. The gluteus maximus acts as a restraint for forward progression. The trunk quickly shifts posteriorly at the heel strike in the initial contact. So there will be a shift of the body COG posteriorly over the gluteus maximus, and moving of the line of the force posterior to the hip joints. Foot will be in the contact with the floor. That requires less muscle strength to maintain the hip in extension. So as you all know, the gluteus maximus is a powerful hip extensor during the stance phase. Okay. This shifting is referred as rocking horse gait because of the extreme backward and forward movement of the trunk. So as you can see in this picture, the patient might walk in this kind of gait pattern. The next one is the gluteus medius gait. It is also known as the Trendelenburg gait or the lurching gait. When one side is affected, the individual shifts the trunk over to the affected side during the stance phase. When the right gluteus medius or the hip adductor is weak, It causes two things. So the number one thing is the body leans to the left leg during the stance phase of the left leg, and the right side of the pelvis will drop to the right, and the leg leaves the ground and begins the swing phase. Okay? Shifting the trunk over the affected side is an attempt to reduce the amount of strength required of the gluteus medius to stabilize the pelvis. Okay, one of the then bilateral paralysis and the duck or waddling gait. The person latches on both the sides like this. In Tendelberg, person latches on only one side, whereas the bilateral or waddling gait, the person latches on the left and the right side. Okay, the body sways from side to side on the wider base of support with excessive shoulder swing. It majorly occurs during a condition called as muscular dystrophy of the lower limb. Then we are going to see about the quadriceps gait. The quadriceps action is needed during the heel strike and the foot flat of the gait phases. This flexion move, because since the quadriceps is a powerful flexor, knee flexor, okay? The quadriceps weakness or paralysis will lead to buckling of the knee during the gait, thus loss of balance will occur. Patient can compensate if he has a normal hip extensor and plantar flexor muscles. With good strength, I mean. So the compensation. So with the quadriceps weakness, the individual may lean to forward over the quadriceps at the early part of the stance phase as the weight is being shifted to the stance leg. Normally the line of force falls behind the knee, requiring the quadriceps action to keep the knee from buckling. Okay. By leaning forward at the hip, the COG is shifted forward. The center of gravity is shifted forward, and the line of force now falls just front to the knee. Normally it falls behind the knee. Now during this gait pattern, it falls in front of the knee. And this will force the knee backward into the knee extension. That is locking of knee. Helps in better standing or walking. Another compensatory maneuver to be expected is use of the hip extensors and the ankle plantar flexor muscles in a close chain action to pull the knee into extension at the initial contact. Just using your hand by this way. In the addition, the patient may physically push the anterior thigh during the stance phase, holding the knee in extension. So the next one is the genu recurvatum gait. The problem is due to the weakness of the hamstrings muscle, which is responsible for the flexion of the knee joint. Two things are going to happen in this phase. During a stance phase, knee will go into hyperextension, excessive hyperextension, referred as genu recurvatum gait. Okay, during the stance phase, during the deacceleration of the terminal swing phase, at the end of the swing phase, without the hamstrings to slow down the swing forward of the leg, the knee will suddenly snap into flexion to extension. Okay, this will happen in this genu recurvatum gait. So the next one we are going to see about the hemiplegic gait. The spastic pattern of the hemiplegic gait will be hip will be extended, adducted and medially rotated, and the knee will be extended, which will be most often unstable. Ankle is drop foot with ankle plantar flexion and inversion, equino varus deformity, which is present during the both stance and the swing phase. Okay. So in order to clear the foot from the ground, the hip and knee should flex. But the spastic muscles won't allow the hip and knee to flex for the foot clearance. So the patient hikes the hip and brings the affected leg by making an half circle, circumdecting the gait. This hence is also known as the circumdatory gait. Usually there will be no reciprocal arm swing. The step length tends to be lengthened on the involved side and shortened on the uninvolved side. So next abnormal gait we are going to see in this video is the scissoring gait. It results in the spasticity of the bilateral adductor muscles of the hip. One leg is crossed directly over the other leg, with each step like crossing the blades of a scissor. This problem is causing due to a neurological problem called as palsy, cerebral palsy. So as you can see in this picture, one leg is crossed like a scissor-like pattern. So the next one is the dragging or a paraplegic gait. As you can see, there is spasticity of both hip and knee extensors muscle and the ankle plantar flexor. So in order to clear the foot from the ground, patient has to drag his both lower limbs and swing them and place it forward. Next is the cerebellar ataxic or Drunkard's gait. An abnormal function of the cerebrum will result in this kind of gait pattern, a disturbance of normal mechanism controlling the balance. Therefore, the patient will walk in a broader base of support. Okay, wider or broader base of support. The wider base of support is a larger side deviation of center of gravity. It results in an irregular swinging sideways to a tendency to fall on each step. This is also known as the reeling gait. Okay. Then there is also known as the sensory ataxic gait. This is a typical gait pattern seen in patients affected by stapes dorsalis. It is a degenerative disease affecting the posterior horn cells and the PC, the posterior column of the spinal cord. Then because of the lesion, the proprioceptive impulse will not reach the cerebellum. The patient will lose his joint sensor portion, that is joint portion and sense JPS, for his limb on a particular space. So because of loss of the joint portion sense, the patient abnormally raises his leg high and jerks it and forward to strike the foot with a stamp. This is also known as a marching gait or a stamping gait. The patient compensated his loss of joint portion sense by vision. So his head will be down while he is walking. So the next one is the short shuffling or the fascinating gait. Normal functions of the basal ganglia is to control the muscle tone, planning and programming of the normal movements, control of associated movements like reciprocal arm swinging. A typical example of basal ganglia lesion is Parkinsonism that will lead to the fascinating gait. So because of the rigidity, all joints will go to a forward flexed position and the spine stooping forward, as you can see. In this position, patient might be. This posture displaces the COG anteriorly. In order to keep the COG within the BOS, the patient will take only short shuffling steps. Due to loss of voluntary control over the movement, they lose balance and walk faster as if he is chasing the COG. It's also called as fascinating gait. Since the shuffling steps, it's also otherwise called as the shuffling gait. So the next gait is abnormal gait pattern is the foot drop or the slapping gait. This is due to the weak dorsiflexors caused due to the paralysis of common peroneal nerve. So common peroneal nerve applies the tibialis anterior muscle, as you all know. This is responsible for a dorsiflexion of the ankle. There won't be normal heel straight. Instead of the foot comes in contact with the ground as if the whole slapping sound. Okay, it's also known as slapping gait. Due to plantar flexion of the ankle, there will be relative lengthening at the leading extremity, the forward moving extremity. So to clear the ground, the patient lifts the limb too high, and hence the gait is also otherwise known as the high stepping gait. Okay, this is next one we see is the equinus gait. Equinus is also known as the horse. The paralysis of the dorsiflexors result in the plantar flexor contracture. The patient will walk on his toes. Toe walking will occur. It's also known as the equinus gait. The other cause of compensation by the plantar flexor is for a short leg. Okay. So the next we will see about the equinovarus gait. There will be ankle will be in plantar flexion and subtalar inversion will occur. The patient will be walking in the outer border of the foot. This is common in the deformity called as congenital talipes and equinovarus. It's a congenital deformity occurring in the infants. Next, we are going to see about the calcaneal gait. This is a result of paralysis of the plantar flexors completely, causing in dorsiflexor contraction. The patient will be walking on his heel. One we have saw already toe walking. This is the heel walking. This is characterized by greater amount of ankle dorsiflexion. So the ankle will be fully extended. That's means looked up. All toes will be looking up. Only patient knee will go for flexion. And during the stance, a shorter step length will be seen on the affected side. Single limb support duration is shortened because of the difficulty in the stabilizing of the tibia on the knee. Okay, as you can see. Next one is the knock-knee gait. It's also known as the genu-valgum gait. Due to the decreased physiological valgus of the knee, both knees will face each other, and when there will be a wider base of support in this gait pattern. Next one is the bow-leg gait, also known as the genu-varum gait. Knees will face outwards due to the increased physiological valgus of the knee. then the legs will be in a bowed position, and the gait pattern will also be similar.